Okay, so let us carry on, and just a quick reminder: what we're looking at is the various ways of giving up the defilements, of the mind, and the first way that is discussed here is the way of giving up through seeing. In other words, through insight, seeing things clearly. That is the first one, and so there's two sides that are being discussed here. One is the improper attention, attention that leads to problems and leads to suffering and a kind of the carrying on of samsaric existence. And then there's the alternative way, which leads out of the problems, out of suffering, etc. So far we have been looking at the problematic side, the improper attention. And then we're going to move on and we're going to look at the right way of attending to the world, and to ourselves, or whatever else it is. So what is focused on here is the sense of I am, the problem of the ego, or the self-identity, and relating ourselves to the world in various ways. That's been what we've been looking at. And once you relate to the world through this sense of I am, and you build up an identity in that and all of these kind of things, then certain views about existence arise from that. And these views are what come up now. So we'll just discuss those views briefly, and then we'll look at the alternative in a minute. So that's why the Buddha then carries on. It says, when they attend improperly in this way, in other words, when you have the ayoniso manasikara, the wrong kind of attention, one of the following 6 views arises in them, is taken as a genuine fact. So these are the kind of views that are, taken to be true. The view, myself exists in an absolute sense. The view, myself does not exist in an absolute sense. Let's just stop there, because these are the kind of 2 preliminary views. And these views are, in an absolute sense, means that the idea that the self is something which is permanent, which is always there, which is reliable, and then from that comes this idea of what is called the sasata ditta in the sutta, which means the eternalist view. So when you die, you are kind of united with the cosmos. That's the kind of Hindu view, or maybe more of a Christian view is where you kind of, you kind of get united with God or something like that. And these are similar kind of ideas. It's kind of the eternalist view. In one way or another, things are eternal. These views can also be that you go on in samsara for a while, you have a number of rebirths, and then after a kind of purification through samsaric existence, then you kind of get united with the absolute or something to that effect. So this is one side. And the other side is myself does not exist absolutely, means that you have a self, but that self is subject to kind of ending, and to kind of to destruction, if you like. And that is the idea of the annihilationist view, called ucheda ditti in the suttas, where things get annihilated, things come to an end when you come to the end of your life. And it is fascinating. You look at the history of world philosophy, the history of world religions, these are the kind of views you see everywhere. Everything really has these 2 opposites in a sense. And these opposites existed in India 2,500 years ago. They exist in the present day. If you look at the world today, religions tend to have the eternalist view, and people who are more atheists tend to have more the annihilationist view, but none of these are, again, these 2, there's more overlap in these things than you might think. And it was like that 2,500 years ago, and it probably was like that 100,000 years ago, and eons ago. It's always been like this, and the reason it's always been like this is because that one constant in samsaric existence is the sense of I am, and from that sense of I am, these ideas emerge. So it's probably always been like that. And sometimes we think that kind of our modern outlook, atheist outlook in modern societies, where we kind of reject some of the traditional religions, And the idea that things come to an end when you die is a modern way of thinking about the world, but it's not really modern at all. It's always been there, always been around. It's just that it goes through ups and downs, and sometimes one side is stronger than the other, etc. So these are the two basic outlooks, yeah. And then comes the more developed form of these views, and that is what comes up next here, where you put even more content into these things. But these things are important to people, right? Most people have some kind of feeling for these questions because this has to do with our very survival. There's nothing more dear to us than these kind of things because it has to do with us, what's going to happen with us. And some people are keen on having it all over and done with when they die, but the majority of people usually want to carry on in some form or another. And then this particular basic view then develops into what is called Sakkaya Ditthi in the Sutta. Sakkaya Ditthi means like the view of identity, identity view. In other words, you have some sense of your own identity, and you relate that to your to your psychology, one way or another. And you relate it to what is called the khandhas in the sutras. The khandhas are just aspects of your personality. So you relate that sense of I to these aspects of our psychology, so that the sense of I has a kind of content. There's something you identified with. This is what this next part is about. So the view, I perceive the self with the self. The view, I perceive what is not self with the self. The view, I perceive the self with what is not self. Yeah. So the idea here is that you divide up your who you are as a person into different aspects, and some of those aspects you take to be the real me, and the other aspects are not the real me. Yeah. So you perceive self with self would be like, your awareness or your consciousness, the fact that you are able to know things in the world. You take that to be the real me. And of course, what is it that perceives that self? Well, it actually is consciousness itself. So the self perceives the self. Consciousness perceives consciousness. Awareness is aware of awareness. Yeah. So this is the self perceiving the self. This is one way of thinking about this. Or you can say, I take all of this to be me. Yeah, my whole mind is me. Yeah? What is it that perceives the mind? Well, it is the mind. Yeah, all aspects of the mind kind of put together into a me. Yeah? How do I perceive that? Well, the mind perceives the mind. Yeah. So you don't have to worry too much about this kind of idea. The idea here is just that there are some aspects you take to be the real you, and then the other aspects are like kind of appendages or whatever to that self. Like the things owned by the self or held onto by the self. I perceive what is not self with the self. Yeah, so not self might be like the body. Yeah, we all can agree that body is impermanent. You're going to have to lay it down eventually. But the mind perceives the body. So if you take the mind to be self, you perceive what is not self, the body, with that mind. Yeah, fairly straightforward, I suppose. And I perceive the self with what is not self. And so that would be, for example, if you divide the mind into different parts. So, for example, you divide the mind into just perception. Yeah, perception is what perceives, but you don't take that perception to be yourself. Maybe you take your agency to be yourself. Yeah, I'm the agent in my life. I'm the creative force. I'm the doer that does things in the world. So perception, which is non-self, sees that agent, which is the self. Yeah. So these are just so again ways of relating to the body and mind. Certain things we take to be self, other things we don't take to be self. And this is expanded on in other suttas into the idea of Sakkaya Ditthi. Identity view, personality view, which shows an even broader range of possibilities. Yeah, taking the five khandhas or various combination of the five khandhas. Yeah, taking the doing to be the self, the knowing to be the self, and all the five khandhas, and that you take them either to be me, to be mine, to be in me, or to be or to be, now it's the last way, me, mine, in me, or me in the self. Yeah, so there's different relationships you can have to these things. So it's just a kind of a nice philosophical thing. It doesn't. So that is the idea of Sakaya Ditti in relation to the 5 khandhas. If you look at that list, there is one thing you see is missing from that list. Yeah, and that is perceiving non-self with non-self. That is missing. And of course, the reason why that is missing is because that is exactly what is the right view, the right outlook. It's only as long as there is a self in there, you perceive self with non-self, you perceive non-self with self, you self with self. As long as there is a self involved, that is when the problem arises. But perceiving non-self with non-self, well, that is actually the kind of the Buddha's idea. That's why that is missing there, because that would be wise attention. That will be proper attention when you see it in that way here. So that view does not arise because that happens to be right view, which you only gain by practicing this path. So then comes a really full-fledged view, yeah, or they have such a view as this. This self of mine is the one who speaks and feels and experiences the results of good and bad deeds in all the different realms. This self is permanent, everlasting, eternal, and imperishable, and will last forever and ever. So this is like a kind of very solid idea of the self. Yeah, this thing that carries on from realm to realm. So here we have a idea of rebirth also included in this. Yeah, what I mentioned before, and then this self is kind of this inner thing which moves on from life to life and experiences changeable conditions from one realm to another one, depending on your actions, and you have to experience the karma of the past, etc., etc. So this is like a kind of very evolved idea of the self-view. So there you are. That is all the various ideas of self. And these are all considered problematic from a Buddhist point of view. They lead to conflict, they lead to problems, they lead to greed, they lead to all the problems in life and the world. And for that reason, the Buddha says this is called a misconception. A thicket of views, a desert of views, a trick of views, the evasiveness of views, a fetter of views. An uneducated, ordinary person who is fettered by views is not freed from rebirth, old age, and death, from sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They are not freed from suffering, I say. So this is, so you have this kind of long series of descriptions of these views. Misconception, ditti gata, having kind of bad, wrong views, basically, misconceptions. The thicket of views. This is a thicket is like a dense bush, or a dense jungle or something like that. And you're kind of caught, and there's kind of thorns on all sides, and you can't really get through, because it's so dense and thick. And you're kind of trapped in this jungle by the density of it all. You can't really get your way through. And these views are like that. You're trapped in these views. It's like a jungle which kind of keeps you in samsara. You can't get through it. You can't get out of it. It kind of encloses you on all sides, and you're trying to kind of bash your way through. But there is no way through because the I am keeps you stuck in that jungle. So these are kind of nice pictures of kind of the idea, gives you some idea of the problem with these views. You are trapped by them in this sense. Not only are you trapped by them, but it's like a desert, the desert of views. There's no real sustenance there. It doesn't kind of lead in the right way. It's like a dry landscape. It isn't that kind of keeps you trapped in samsara, and all you have is this suffering going on and on. It's like a desert of views. There is no oasis. The oasis, of course, would be right view, but wrong view is problematic. The trick of views, we are deceived by this. It's a delusion, it's a falsehood, it's not a reality. You want to emerge from these false views. The evasiveness of views. Evasiveness of views, I'm not sure what that is supposed to mean. Vipanditang. Okay, I think that is, what is that translated as elsewhere? As the kind of the oscillation of views or something like that. And the fetter of views is the last one. Yeah, this is the kind of often the most important one of these. The fetter of views. It means you are fettered to existence. You are fettered to suffering. In other words, tied to it, bound to it, glued to existence by these views. They kind of keep you there, and there's no way out as long as you hold on to these things. So this is why we try to stand back a little bit and to see reality properly, and then abandon that delusion, abandon the wrong view, so that we can see things according to reality. And this is kind of what this is all about. So this is the problem. Yeah, the problem has been set out. So then the question is, what is the alternative? And what is the alternative is what comes up next. This would be the real seeing according to the Buddha, according to the Buddhist path. So this is how it goes. But take an educated noble disciple who has seen the noble ones and who is skilled and trained in the teachings of the noble ones. They have seen superior or good persons and are skilled and trained in the teaching of these superior persons. They understand to which things they should pay attention and to which things they should not pay attention. So they pay attention to things they should and don't pay attention to things they shouldn't. So this is the skilled person trained in the teaching. Yeah? So this is someone who has listened to the Dhamma. You are skilled in it. You use that teaching wisely, and then you train according to those teachings. And because you are training, because you're listening to the Buddha, you're applying your mind in accordance with how the Buddha recommends you, and you understand, you can see for yourself that obviously this is going to be beneficial. Yeah, like not getting angry and that kind of stuff. You understand why this works, and then as you do that, yeah, you start emerging from these problems. So you understand what you should pay attention to and what you should not pay attention to. So what are these things? What are the things to which they don't pay attention and should not? They are the things that, when attention is paid to them, give rise to unarisen defilements and make arisen defilements grow. Yeah, the defilement of sensual desire, desire to be reborn, and ignorance. These are the things to which they don't pay attention and should not. And what are the things to which they do pay attention and should? They are the things that, when attention is paid to them, do not give rise to unarisen defilements and give up arisen defilements, the defilements of sensual desire, the desire to be reborn, and ignorance. These are the things to which they do pay attention and should. Because of not paying attention to what they should not and paying attention to what they should, unarisen defilements don't arise, and arisen defilements are given up. Yeah, so it's actually quite a simple idea. It's the idea that when we pay attention in the right way, well, the way we know that we're paying attention in the right way is becoming less angry. We're becoming less attached to the sensory world. It's really as simple as that. You see less defilements arising in you. You see that you are generally have more good qualities. Yeah, over time you're becoming more kind. You're becoming more compassionate to the world, more understanding of other people. You react to them in better ways. Yeah, and these qualities are building up inside of you. Mindfulness is becoming stronger. Yeah, every time you go on a retreat, you can see that your mind has more clarity. You're more in the present. You're less distracted by all the worldly thoughts and all these kind of things. And that is how you know that you are succeeding in paying attention in the right way. Also in daily life, you see how you react to people around you and to everything. And in this way, you can know that you're heading in the right direction. Yeah, one of the main things that are given up, the main defilement, is the defilement of sensual desire. You see, you are less interested in that world. You start to see that world actually is inherently problematic. We'll get back to this later on, but for now, just notice that it's there. This is one of the important things. So, how do we do this? How do we pay attention in this way? And this then will come as no surprise to you when you see the answer. They properly attend. This is suffering. They properly attend. This is the origin of suffering. They properly attend. This is the cessation of suffering. They properly attend. This is the practice that leads to the cessation of suffering. Yeah, so these are the four noble truths. This is like the scaffolding of everything in Buddhism. Everything, all teachings, they fit into these four noble truths. And so this is how you attend. You attend in a way that is in accordance with these four noble truths. So what exactly does it mean to attend properly then? This is suffering. What does that mean? How do we do that? And you can do this in many ways. Yeah, it doesn't really matter. You just have to have a realistic view of existence and of these things. But one of the ways of doing this is to kind of layer it, as I mentioned before. I mentioned this already. I'll mention it again. The idea of fitting it into the idea of sila, samadhi, panya. Sila being morality, or character, if you like. Samadhi being the meditation aspect of things. And then panya being the wisdom aspect. So you can kind of see this is suffering in relation to these three things. Yeah. And in this way, you have like a framework on how to think about this. And so, for example, this is suffering initially might just mean understanding that living a immoral life, doing bad things in the world, leads to suffering. For whom? Well, for yourself, first and foremost, but also obviously for the people you are affecting in this way by your immoral conduct. So understanding this, this is kind of the beginning of understanding this is suffering. Whereas treating other people well, being kind, being respectful of others, these kind of things, well, that actually leads the other way around. It leads to happiness in the world for yourself and also for others. And it's worthwhile reflecting on this. I mean, I'm sure all of you would agree with this straight away, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. No point in coming here if you're a bit of a scallywag. So you're all, you're here for the right reasons already. So that's good. But the point is that to be fully moral, have fully a character that is always kind of leaning towards these things, even just mentally, how you think about people, how you perceive the world, actually it takes a very powerful commitment and perseverance. And it's difficult to do very often in daily life because the input and the impact from the external world can be so powerful. So to be able to kind of withstand the impact of the world, to be able to do things in the right way, even when it gets difficult, you need that support of right view, of seeing things in the right way. So it's very useful to develop that idea, that actually it really does create suffering. It really is problematic when we do things in the wrong way, when we're coming from anger, when we're coming from attachment to that world outside of us. So develop that thought. Try to understand why that is the case. And once you get that, once you start to see that every time you do something wrong, you're taking a step backwards on the path. Do you have time to take a step backwards? Do you have time to kind of wallow in suffering even just for a short amount of time? And the answer is no, because time is always short. And this is one of the reasons why the idea of the death contemplation is powerful, because it reminds us that death is just it is certain, but in fact is worse than being certain. It can really happen at any time. We just don't know. And then when you start to see these things, then every step forward on the path matters. You cannot really wait. It's like it says in the Sutta, it's like your hair is on fire. If your hair on fire, what are you going to do? Are you going to think, I'll kind of extinguish it later on, or are you going to get on with it now straight away? You're going to do it now, because it's kind of pretty vital if your hair is on fire. So this is the thing. You reflect on this and you understand the importance of getting on with it now. Now is the time to do this. And also trying to understand clearly the connection between how we live, how we think, the the morality of our behavior and how we feel about ourselves. Seeing that very clearly, then you kind of you build up this idea of suffering. you think about it in the right way. So this is the first step, if you like, understanding why having a good character matters so enormously. The second step then, which relates to meditation practice and relates more to the development of the mind, is that the biggest problem there is our attachment to the world. And we can see that often in meditation. Meditation goes well for a while, then it plateaus. You come to a point it doesn't go any further, and then it kind of peters out, and you come out of your meditation. So why does it plateau? Why doesn't it go further? And very often the reason is very simply that we have some attachment that we can't let go of. There's something there which it can be very hard to see exactly what it is, but there's something there which is holding us back from becoming even more still. We are attaching maybe to basically just the senses in a certain way, to still to this world around us to a certain extent. So we cannot let go of that world because we perceive that world as somehow giving us some degree of happiness or meaning or purpose, and so we can't let go of it any further, and then we stop. So here is where we have to see that world with greater clarity, see the limits of that world. And as you see the limits of the external world, the world of the five senses, this world that we are so immersed in, we are kind of almost, we're kind of fully, we are so enmeshed in this world of the five senses, it's very hard to see what is going on. But as we gradually emerge from the very deep-seated attachment to that world, including our ability to perceive that world through our senses, that enables the gradual deepening of meditation. There's like an inverse relationship between our attachment to the world and our ability to meditate. The more you let go of the world, the better your meditation is. And you start to find the refuge within rather than the refuge without. And a far superior refuge, conducing to far more happiness, enjoyment, stillness, being far less vulnerable because you have that inner strength that no one can really take away from you. That is what then becomes a very powerful condition for taking the meditation further. So that is like seeing suffering, in a broader way, understanding the problems of the world around us, and it's not that hard to see. We have just been through the COVID. We have not actually through yet. We're still kind of in the throes of the COVID virus around the world. And it can see all the suffering that it causes, and just to remember that this is the nature of the world. Nothing has really gone wrong. There's going to be other problems coming over the horizon. There's always new problems. There's always things arising. Nothing has gone wrong. It's just the way things are in this world. And the more you get that, the less interest in that world is. Because if it always throws these curveballs at us all the time, then how interesting can it be? It is always going to let us down, one way or another. Why not go somewhere where you are not let down instead? Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So the nature of the world is like this, and that is the problem. So gradually you start to let go. Then there is the last way of thinking about suffering, and this is really what we have been looking at now, and this is the problem of the idea of I am, the existence of I am. And so to understand that this I always gets in the way, the I is part of the problem. Why is that? And the reason, there's a number of reasons for that. One of the reasons is because once you have a sense of I, you are kind of, it means that you become sort of a rival to all the other I's in the world. There will be a sense of your identity, my identity, and sometimes these identities will clash with each other because we have our own little realm and our own little world. And so whenever there's a sense of I and a sense of identity, then as soon as that identity is threatened, and it will be threatened by the ups and downs of the world, then you have a problem, and you will grieve, and because you feel a loss of the sense of your identity is one of the most difficult things to take. And a very simple example of that is people who lose their wealth and then commit suicide as a consequence of that. People who have been very wealthy and they identify as wealthy. This is who I am. I'm important because I have so many assets or whatever it is. and then it all goes pear-shaped, and they lose all their money because the stock market just drops dramatically, and then they jump off a building or something like that. You hear about these things happening, people, doing these kind of things. Why? It's because you identify too much with being wealthy. That's who you are. You become this wealthy person. It's kind of a bit sad, isn't it, that we identify so much with that. It's kind of sad because it shows you that you haven't really got much of an inner life. All you have is these external things, and you take this far too seriously. And there's a very simple way of understanding why identity is problematic, because it always gets challenged by external conditions. And it doesn't matter where you have that identity in external things, because the world is always changing. There's always the chance that the carpet will be pulled down from under your feet, and suddenly that is gone, and then you're going to grieve the consequences. But it is more than that. One of the important things to understand about the sense of I is that it always has to have a content. The content of the I will be something inside of you that you take to be, this is the real me, this is the I. And that will be some kind of perception, it will be some kind of feeling about who you are. And that perception of I will then also stretch into the world. The belongings that you have, the family that you have, is similar to what I was just talking about just before. The idea that the I is defined by the things around us. It doesn't stop with the internal state, but it goes into the world as well. So we are defined by all of these things that we own, that we think we own anyway, but we don't properly own. And because we are define ourselves by those things in the external world, we consider those things to be me and mine. This is who I am. And again, because of that, then we fight over these things, especially when they are threatened. Things happen to the things in the world when they are threatened. We fight over them because they are part of me. They're part of the I am delusion. Mine, things being mine, is just an extension of the I am illusion. You cannot have something which is mine without I am at the core of it. So this whole extension of the I into the world, especially into that sensory world, which is so problematic, which is so unreliable, which is so out of control. As long as the sense of I relies on its identity for things in that world, if those things are impermanent, then you are asking for suffering, asking for trouble, asking for all kinds of things. So this is what is happening here. This is why this is the kind of the root problem of the whole thing here. And then, because what is worse is that, because of that sense of identity in that world, and because these things have to do with who you think you are, you do bad things to sustain that illusion of being in control. You have to try to hold on to those things. And when you do bad things, you are creating suffering for yourself. You think you are creating happiness because you think you are sustaining the I am delusion. This is mine. I want to hold on to my stuff. You think you are creating happiness for yourself, when in fact you're creating suffering because you're doing bad things in the pursuit of an illusion. It's kind of terrible, isn't it? We're doing all of these bad things. We do bad karma. We're creating suffering for ourselves and others. For what purpose? So we can sustain what is only an illusion in the first place. You can see how problematic it is, right? And then, because of that, of course, you create lots of suffering for yourself in the future. Part of that, from a Buddhist point of view, will then be rebirth in bad destinations in the future, or even bad circumstances as a human being. And all of this come out of the illusion of an I. You can see how pernicious it is, how problematic it is, and how it sustains this round of rebirth, forever moving up and down, sideways, not really going anywhere, carrying on and on. And that is what carries on forever and ever, not yourself, but if you're not careful, this sense of the round of rebirth could carry on for a long, long time. Not forever and ever, because there's no such thing in Buddhism, but for a long time anyway. So this is how you think about suffering. This is how you use yoniso manasikara, and you have to apply it to your own life. But start with the basic things. Don't start kind of in the deepest things. Start with the simple things of how to relate to the world in a wise way with kindness and these kind of things. And then that will eventually lead you to also considering the deeper things down the track. So you have to know what is appropriate for you, depending on where you are at on the path. So this is how you think this is suffering. And this is, I think, the most important one of these contemplations. This is the origin of suffering. Well, that is a bit harder to see, and I think this is the sort of thing you really see only when you become a stream enterer. This is the idea that craving gives rise to rebirth. It sustains the suffering in the long run. This is the cessation of suffering, which is the idea that the ending of craving, it ends. It ends suffering. Well, you know that already to some extent, because when you don't crave, when your mind is peaceful and calm, you feel quite nice. This is the coolness of meditation practice. But in the bigger picture, it also means that it stops this whole idea of rebirth. And then this is the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. This is part of what we have been looking at now, the idea of yoniso manasikara and ayoniso manasikara. The whole path can really be expressed in those terms. Wise attention versus unwise attention. And as long as you have wise attention, well, that is, you're practicing that path already. So it can be summarized in that. So having that clarity about the difference between the two. And when you do this, it says here, you give up 3 fetters. 3 ties, 3 ropes that tie you to this samsaric existence. And these 3 fetters are identity view, doubt, and the apprehension of precepts and observances. So you give up 3 fetters. And that's good news. Fetters, it's not nice to be fettered. So you unshackle yourself from these fetters. Fetters are this kind of ball and chain that you have in the old days. You have a ball and kind of steel ball. You have a chain and kind of linked to your, fettered to your foot, and you can't really move properly, like they did with criminals back in the Middle Ages or something like that. So you are fettered. You are kind of tied down. So we are fettered to suffering. That's the problem. So if you want not to suffer, you have to untie or undo those fetters. That's kind of the point here. So these are the first fetters that are being undone. You're kind of releasing yourself from suffering in a big way by doing this. And this is the definition of stream entry. This is the definition of seeing reality as it is for the first time. So these are the first thing that you overcome. So what is it that you overcome? Well, identity view is the first one. Identity view is what I just said before. It's called sakkaya ditthi. Sakkaya means like the existing body. The view that there is an existing personality. That's really what it means. And so because you have looked at this in the right way, you have contemplated the depth of your meditation, you have seen that there is nothing in here, absolutely nothing that can be held onto as permanent, because you see that you lose the sense of there being an inherent thing inside of you that is always there, the real me. You understand that there's nothing in you which is the real you. There's just things coming and going, things arising and passing away. This is what this is about. And at that moment, you can never again have the view that you exist in some permanent fashion. This is kind of the profound insight of stream entry here. And so how do you view the world from that point of view? You view the world in relation to dependent origination. You see how things originate depending on causes and conditions. That is what you see here. You see that craving gives rise to rebirth, and you see that when craving ends, no more rebirth will happen in the future. Sakkaya ditthi. If someone asks you if there is a self, you will know there is no self. You will be very clear about that. You still, as we mentioned before, have a little bit of you still think to some extent in terms of a self, yeah, because it takes a long time to kind of overcome those habits of the mind. But the view has been purified at this point. So this is Sakkaya Ditthi, yeah, it has gone. No longer have any, you don't have these ideas anymore in your mind, these views that there's something permanent inside of you. And you may wonder, you know, if you think about your own mind, how you feel about yourself, maybe it is not clear to you exactly how that relates to your current perceptions. Yeah, well, do I really feel like a self anyway? I can sort of agree with what he's saying, but there's a big difference here between having the philosophical idea. Yeah, I sort of agree. I can't really see anything here. There is a big difference between having that as a philosophical view and actually really feeling it deep down. That is a big difference. And regardless of what philosophical view you have, there's still a feeling in there somewhere that you exist somehow. There's a feeling of I am, yeah? And if someone threatens you, then you will see straight away that this feeling of I am is very strong and it's very dear to us, something that we hold on to. So it is this feeling, yeah? Sometimes it's amorphous, you can't really put your hands on it, or you can't really say exactly what it is. It's just this kind of, this uncertain feeling that I am in here somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but I know I am here. Yeah, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but that's kind of the feeling. And it actually turns out to be false. So what happens here is actually a revolution in your consciousness, when you see this, because it turns over a very deep-seated feeling of what you are as a person. So it's important to understand this in the right way and to see what's going on here. Even though you may see psychologists or philosophers in the world who say, there is no self, we can't see anything in there, they still have that feeling inside of them, I am, in a deep, deep way. That is not the same. The view they have is not the same as the kind of view we're talking about here. This is much more profound, much more to do with psychology on a very deep sense, on a deep level. So this is the first fetter, and this is the one that really matters, because once you overcome this one, this is what it means to see things according to reality, and all the other aspects of the Dhamma, they fall into place as a consequence of that. And this is also why doubt, the fetter of doubt, is also overcome at this point, precisely because now you know, and you understand the path, you have understood all of these Four Noble Truths, and because of that, you don't doubt anymore what is good. The doubt here refers to very specific kind of doubt. It refers to knowing, understanding what are good qualities and what are bad qualities. Now you know what are the good qualities in life. You know what it is that you have to develop. You know what it is what you have to abandon. You understand the path, how the path works, what it means to purify yourself and give up these problems so you can see clearly. You have understood that the clarity of seeing comes from a mind which is extremely clear and powerful, where there is no defilements in the mind. So you have to practice a path that overcomes these defilements. And all of this thing gels completely for you for the first time. You don't have any doubt anymore as to what it is that you have to do. You don't have any doubt as to what is a wholesome, skillful mind state and what is an unwholesome mind state. So doubt is gone. It's it's nice, isn't it? You know exactly what you have to do. You sit down, you meditate, and that's why it is easy, relatively easy for someone who is a stream bender to attain samadhi, because they know exactly where to lean the mind. It's a bit like Ajahn Brahmali said, all I do, I sit down and I lean the mind towards renunciation. And it just happens, because you know where to look for happiness. You know exactly where it is. And so it just happens automatically. Doubt also refers to doubt about teachings. You know which teachings point to the truth. You know that the Buddhist teachings are right. You know that the Buddha was just this amazing person who was able to see reality, because suddenly you have the same insight. So now you know that the Buddha saw that same reality. You have no doubt anymore where you should go to find the highest kind of spiritual teachings. You know where it is. And it says in the suttas that for someone who is a stream enter, it is impossible to take anyone outside, apart from the Buddha, as your teacher. Yeah, you find the sustenance for your spiritual practice always within Buddhism. It doesn't mean that you cannot find people who are wise in a more preliminary sense elsewhere, but it is the Buddha who sees through this idea of the self, and this is what makes him special, and you know that at that particular point. So these are the doubts you overcome, yeah? But it's not kind of the ordinary doubts of life. Yeah? How do you bake this cake correctly or something like that? That doesn't really come into this. Sometimes we think the Buddha was omniscient, he knew everything, but there isn't really any evidence for that in the suttas, that the Buddha knew everything. In fact, I think that kind of detracts a little bit from the Buddha. Yeah, he knows everything. That's not really the point. The point is he had spiritual insight. That is what matters. Then we have the last of these fetters, and it's translated here by Ajahn Sujato as a misapprehension of precepts and observances. And the Pali is Silabbata Paramasa. And paramasa doesn't really mean misapprehension. It means apprehension. It means grasping. It means holding onto. So I would prefer to translate this as a holding on to precepts and observances. Yeah, so you grasp these things. And the problem here is not the precepts. The problem is not the observances. The problem is the grasping. Yeah, that is the problem here. So it's important to kind of understand this in the right way. So the point is that when you become a stream enterer, you know why you are doing things. You're doing things for the right reason. When you keep your precepts, you do it because you know it's the only way. Yeah, you cannot not keep your precepts at this point. It becomes part of who you are. And because you cannot not keep them, you don't have to grasp them. You don't have to hold on to them. You don't have to cling to these ideas. You know from personal experience that this is the way to go. But for other people, yeah, for those of us who are not stream enterers, well, you have to grasp a little bit. It's okay to grasp your precepts a little bit. It's okay to say, I undertake, yeah, to keep the 8 precepts during this retreat. That is a bit of grasping to say that, yeah? Okay, I undertake, I make this commitment. There's a little bit of holding on in taking that commitment. And that's why we do it, because we need that kind of support to be able to do it, unless you have seen these things clearly. So it's okay to grasp a little bit to kindness, yeah? It's okay to grasp a little bit to compassion and all of these good qualities, because if we don't grasp a little bit, we won't do it. It's really as simple as that. But when you become a stream enterer, well then, the grasping no longer required, because all of these things are internalized. They become part of who you are. This is really what this means. It does not mean that we should start ungrasping straight away, because then we will fail in our pursuit of this goal of the Dhamma. Then there is the observances. What does that mean? And it means all the little things that we do in our life that we think will lead to happiness or lead to something positive. Yeah, and sometimes we grasp onto those things a little bit as well. It is things like bowing down to the Buddha statue. Yeah, and for some of you, this may feel really odd to bow down to a Buddha statue. Yeah, but for others of you who have done this for a long time, it feels completely natural. It's just a matter of perception, how that feels for you. What we are bowing down to is really just the qualities of the Buddha. Yeah, the Buddha, what is a Buddha? Well, the Buddha is a bunch of really good qualities that are worthy of respect. So you bow down to those qualities. That's really what you're doing here. So that is one of those things, yeah? And that can be an observance that you cling to. You feel that you have to always bow down to the Buddha. Yeah, you hold on to that a bit. But later on, when you become a stream enterer, well, you bow down to the Buddha in a more pure sense. You bow down to the Buddha because you know what the Buddha represents, and you respect that very, very deeply. Or meditation practice can sometimes become an observance. Yeah, we meditate and we do that as a matter of course. We just sit down and we think, yeah, I've got to meditate because I'm a Buddhist. Yeah, I can't be a Buddhist without meditating. So every morning you sit down and you meditate and you just nod every morning. Yeah, every morning. Yeah. It doesn't get you anywhere. And this happens in life, and it's okay. It's not a big issue really. But what we really should be doing, instead of just making it into a observance, some kind of habit, some kind of ritual that we meditate all the time. The right way is to actually ask ourselves, am I doing this? Is it working? And if it isn't working, why isn't it working? And sometimes it is better to maybe let go for a while. Okay, let's not meditate for a few days and see what happens, and then come back to it, because you may need a bit of freshness in your approach, for example. So this is a difference between grasping on to the observance and using the observance for your benefit to move on in your practice. That one is more reflective. You think about what you're doing. Am I doing it in the right way? The other one is more, I just do it because, this. I hold on to this. I grasp onto it. So same thing with like coming to the monastery. We have lots of really wonderful supporters who come to the monastery once a week. Bring food. Every week they come. And there are some of these ladies that are getting pretty ancient now. Some of these ladies that come to the monastery. And we're coming to the monastery every day for over 30 years, actually almost 40 years, I think, since the monastery started up. The monastery goes back to 1983, now it's 221, that's almost 38 years the monastery has been there. It was established on the 1st of November 1983. And some of these ladies have been coming every week, for almost 40 years. Isn't that kind of amazing? It's just kind of astonishing when you think about that, the kind of commitment, to doing that. And it's really, really marvelous. But that too can become like an observance. You just do it after a while. But it's important to refresh these things, to remind yourself what you're actually doing, why you are doing it, to kind of make the most out of these kind of opportunities. Not just to be an empty observance. It's not really empty, because coming to the monastery and offering food, of course, it's going to be good regardless, but you make more out of it than it just being an observance that you hold on to. And in this way, we are maximizing the benefit of this path, rather than just holding on to things that we do because we think we should be doing them. So it's marvelous. Sometimes you really need to think about what is happening in this Buddhist world of ours, and all the good things that are being done in the name of Buddhism. People coming to the monastery every week, offering food to the monks. And sometimes there are literally hundreds of people, especially on the weekend, really large number of people coming. On Sunday, probably on average, 100, 150 people, the average Sunday at the monastery. It's really a lot of people. And then you go to Dhammaloka Center, there's a similar number of people on a Sunday. You go to Dhammasar, there's people going there. And then we are kind of establishing monasteries here and there in many places. And it's just, the support is just magnificent. And then you come here to Jhana Grove, and we have people cooking for the retreats that we do here. It's just so mind-boggling how this works. If you tell people in the world that this is how we do things, they will be kind of, they won't believe you probably. Think, what? That's impossible. The world doesn't work like that. Actually, it does. And it shows you that when people have a sense of confidence that something good is going on, something positive is happening, good qualities come out of people. And it's something really worthwhile rejoicing in. Sometimes we just see the bad qualities in the world. There's so much goodness going on, and we need to remember that. And when you remember that, you sit down in your meditation, it gives rise to a sense of joy. There are things going on in the world. The last thing you want to look at if you want to have joy is, as I said before, the evening news, because that is always going to let you down and be bad. But look elsewhere, and what you see is so many nice things. And then, so you make these things instead of just doing empty observances. Or I shouldn't say empty, you make them meaningful. Even if you just go to the temple, sometimes we say that traditional Buddhists, they kind of go to the temple and they wave some incense sticks in the air, and they put the incense sticks there, and they maybe do a bit of chanting or whatever, then they go. But even that can be done, even that kind of observance can be done in a good way and in a bad way. It depends how you do it. You can do it in an empty way as a pure ritual, or you can make it meaningful. You can say, I'm doing this in homage to the Buddha. I'm doing this in homage to my ancestor. May my ancestors be happy, and make something positive out of it. All rituals and observances can be meaningful or they can be empty, depending on how you do them. It is your intention behind them that really matters to make these things meaningful or not. Anyway, so that is a little bit about the 3 fetters, and how you give these things up, and how these things become more meaningful. I should maybe mention very briefly that there is a description of the stream enterer, the one who has seen the Dhamma and how they relate to precepts. And it specifically says that they relate to the precepts aparamatta. Aparamatta is the opposite of paramasa, the opposite word of what you see here. They don't hold on. They practice purity without grasping, without holding on, because it is kind of internalized in them. That's what you find for the stream enterer. So that is defilements to be abandoned by seeing. And then once you are a stream enterer, then you have to continue practicing the path, all the way till you become an arahant. And that practice of the path that happens then is the ordinary Noble Eightfold Path. The putting in the right effort and the right meditation, all of these kind of things. So this is what we're going to be having a look at for the rest of this retreat. Having finished right view, at least in theory, then we can carry on with the rest of the path. And this becomes, as we go on, you will see this becomes very relevant to everyone's practice. So until we meet again at 3 o'clock, continue enjoying yourself, have a nice lunch, and we'll see you again at 3 o'clock today.